Um, good morning. Oh, let me just bring my sound closer. Move this a little bit to the back. Morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I just want to quickly check something quickly. Morning. All right, we are connected. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. And I am looking forward to this conversation. And I'm also taking note of my time because I have another meeting after this conversation. So I'm not going to be long. What I wanted to do is to briefly just share a bit about the conversation that we were talking about, not even talking about the video note that's flying around, which involves a teenager. I think the teenager is about 15 years of age. And outside of that, this morning, I also shared a clip around a 14-year-old boy, also around something that I said, where I mentioned that we seem to often treat teenagers as if they are adults. So I want to clarify what I mean by that. But also, I'm hoping, really hoping that we don't jump into a judgment trail of parents and how they handle things. For starters, I really don't want us to jump on judgment. And also, I don't want us to come from sounding superior as if we could have handled that situation differently. If we could handle it differently, it would be because we know better or we have a different type of knowing. So those parents are doing what they believe is best with the information or the ability that they have. So I want to open with that so that we don't unnecessarily jump on a bandwagon of judgment. My name is Nomveli Sombanga. I can't hear myself. there's an aeroplane flying around in my community. So I'm not sure if you guys can pick up the sound, but I can't hear myself. So I'm going to try and see if I can increase the volume or just close the window. There's, Let me see if I can close the window. Okay, that's better. So, yo, guys, parenting, hey. So we've been doing this parenting tunes. So this conversation fits perfectly into our conversation around parenting teenagers, ne? So this video, this voice note that's flying around, I wrote some notes so that I don't lose my train of thought. It gives us an opportunity to have a conversation about what is needed when we are parenting teenagers, like what should be our approach and how should we handle things that happen to the teens when they happen. So to make this conversation easy, I'm going to stick very closely to the context of the voice note because it gives us a scenario that is very clear and with a very clear context. And then if I have time, I'll touch on the one about the teen boy who are fighting physically with his mom, and briefly if I have a chance. So what I wanted to say the reason why I keep saying we make the mistake of treating 14-year-olds like adults is that they're not adults. They're still children. If you look into the law in South Africa, the age of consent for sex is 16 years of age. Sometimes you would see 17 years of age as the age of consent where sex is involved. This means that if a sexual act happens between a 16-year-old and a 25-year-old, or a 30-year-old, or a 35-year-old, that is not consensual sex. I'm looking at English, akukho sivumelwano between umntana nomuntu omdala, akukho sivumelwano at all, because by virtue of age, by virtue of emotional immaturity that is not there, abakakhuli ngokwasemoyeni, abakakhuli ngokwasenyameni, abakakhuli ncam ngokwasemqondweni, ngokwengqondo yabo, and therefore there is no consent between a 16-year-old and a 25-year-old or a 13-year-old or a 35-year-old. So in the context of this video, we're talking about 14-year-olds. And if you listen to the video, you realize that the men are adults. So what I want to say is the video or the voice note is treating the kids like they are the perpetrators of the whole particular situation, like they are at fault and this is their sole responsibility. And this is what I'm having a problem with. Now, in the absence of parents knowing any better, this is what I'm saying. Ne? We've spoken about this before, where we say there's something called sexual grooming. We've spoken about this before, sexual grooming. Sexual grooming, I'm going to try and explain it as brief as possible. Sexual grooming is when an older person, it can be a man or a woman, who makes a child comfortable in their presence in various ways in order to make it easy for the child or for the minor to volunteer themselves for a sexual act. I'm going to repeat it again. And this is a very summarized definition. Please read it up. Sexual grooming happens when an adult umenza conscious umntana, amenze abe ready, amenze ibe nguye owenza ozinikelayo to a sexual act. Ne? This is sexual grooming. How sexual grooming happens, it's step by step, where sometimes iqala with the men, usually let's say men for this context, men baza kwakho as a mom okanye bahlale next door kwakho. There's an older man ohlale next door kwakho. First thing he does is he greets your child. Nothing wrong with that, and it's normal. Ubiza umntana, it's fine, it's allowed. Ne? That's the first act. How do you react when to this whole scenario, and how does the child react to this whole greeting? This is the first part. The second part is ngenye imini uzothi mntana khayondithengela isonka eshop, ne? Nothing wrong with that as well, because umntana uyathumeka andithi xa ebuya back umntana uthi bhuti here's i-5 rand yakho for your use, because umntana uthumekayo. Again, nothing wrong with that, because it's bonakala into normal, except the man yena knows the intentions zakhe. He wants to check xa ndimnikeza i-5 rand lomntana uzo-acta kanjani. Is she going to be excited because uyaqala ubona imali engaka, okanye because yena uyayazi ufuna ukwenza ntoni. Ngenye imini am-invite endlini uba mntanam khawuzondisikela esi sonka apha endlini. Now uyayisondeza yonke le nto. This is how grooming works. It's a step-by-step thing. Next minute xa esendlini umntana ubhuti amphathe okanye amgile, because sometimes it's not as defined. Xa iqala amgile apha emzimbeni wakhe to check uba uzoreacta kanjani na umntana. And then at sorry mntanam, and then ngenye imini amgile ambambe, and then ke ngoku without ukwenza anything ekuhlile ngohlobo, ngenye imini amnikeze imali engaphezulu kule mali umntana ayiqhelileyo. Sometimes amnikeze 100 rand okanye amnikeze 1,000 rand. Umntana akayazi, but this is exciting. But then xa enza ngolo hlobo athi ngokubhuti ungaxeli ekhaya ukuba ndikunikeze imali ethile, okanye ungatsho kumamakho okanye kutata wakho uba uza apha endlini, xa ubuya esikolweni ngomso uza apha endlini. Now, because umntana ngumntana, a 14-year-old is very impressionable. A 14-year-old is very excitable. Everything yenzekayo is exciting, it's fun because usengumntana ixesha elininzi. Also, a 14-year-old is discovering umzimba wakhe. Suddenly unamabele, suddenly une-figure, suddenly, men pay attention to her. It's normal. Uyakhula, she's learning that umzimba wakhe sometimes makes abantu bari-active nehlobo oluthile. Absolutely a normal stage of growing up, except men who have the wrong intentions often use this stage to get their way in terms of the grooming side of things. That's when they would make comments, that's when they would make certain things, and then that warms up the child to this particular guy. So we could talk about sexual grooming for a long time. So what I wanted to say is, let's be mindful that we don't find ourselves punishing our kids nge-trap abayenzelwe ngabantu abadala without them knowing. The very act of sexual grooming, when it is successful, it usually is the victim that goes after the man. The very act of sexual grooming, xa isebenzile, when it's highly successful, it's often the child or the victim who goes after the man. I'll make an example because I can make this example. I grew up in a village in the Eastern Cape. In this village, we used to have amadoda amadala ayesuka as mine in a particular time of the year. They would bring sweets, they would bring imali because there were kids around. And what they would do, there were certain girls that they would pinpoint in the village as grown enough. This is the language that we know because we grew up in that area. So they would bring sweets, and then they will use a language until the children, each time those men come from the mines, the kids will be the first one to go to those men because bazophathela into ezimandi, because ngabantwana, they don't know any better. If you look at it from a point of umuntu ongaziyo, uzothi wena ungumzali benifuna ntoni emadodeni. That's the language that I hear a lot in social media. Banini mos abaleqeka empilweni kalo madoda benifuna ntoni emadodeni. What you don't know is what these men did to lure the kids to a point where it's the kids now who become the very enactors of the victimization itself, until they're old enough to realize, wait a minute, and what happened there? And then that's when they realized actually they got involved in an act of being groomed and raped on a consistent basis. If we look closely, or if we listen closely to that voice note, it speaks about drugs, it speaks about weed, it speaks about money. Now tell me, guys, a 14-year-old, you include these three things and a 14-year-old, and the only person you are punishing is the 14-year-old? We know as adults when someone I don't want to say has sex with you, because it's not sex. If you're intoxicated, if you are drunk, if you're not in your senses, it is not consent, it is rape. It is rape. Now put in a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old is given to another 14-year-old to do a sexual act so that it bonds them to this act of violation. Ukuze xa bephuma kulaa ndlu bangakwazi ukuthi we were victimized, because they were made part of it. What groomers do is they make you part and parcel of the act of violation itself. You can't just exit your right. So, what I'm cautioning us is that when these things happen and it involves 14-year-olds, let's be mindful ukuthi kukho le age gap ye-14-year-olds basabantu abadala. Instead of us prosecuting our kids, why are we letting these other guys go? Why are we not talking about the punishment that is going to these guys, to these men? These men can be anyone. It can be the man next door. It can be a man in the family. The other thing I wanted to mention, and this is us cautioning, sorry, I'm reading the comments. Sorry, Monica. Sorry, Monica. The class I got too deep. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I got too passionate and then the class I just came out. I'm so sorry, Sissy. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna try and make this. I'm going forward. I'm gonna give you solutions now, guys, so that you don't get stuck in me reprimanding you guys only. The other thing that I'm gonna encourage us to do, please don't reprimand your kids using recording devices. Don't use recording devices. Don't use audio devices. Don't use video devices. Do not use any device when you're reprimanding or correcting your kids. It doesn't matter how shocked you are. It doesn't matter if you're doing it for private purposes. Say you want to share the context with another family member. Please don't do it, because what it does is you're opening up your child to more harm, because that audio clip or video clip can land anywhere. And the minute it lands on social media, you are adding cyberbullying to your child, you're adding cyber shame to your child, you are giving them a space where they have no place to hide. So even if we don't see a face, but where they stay, their names are known, the kids are known, and therefore it's adding to the trauma on top of what they're going through already, because there's nothing normal about a 14-year-old being named in a sexual act involving older men and money is exchanged in that particular thing. It doesn't help as well when we label kids, say, for an example, in this case, where nisi-prostitute ngoku, niyaprostituta ngoku nina, nithengisa ngamizimba ngoku nina. But if you look at it closely, a 14-year-old, that's a violation. They've been victimized, they've been violated. Then it means instead of us always beating up the kids only, why are the parents not coming together and say, what can we do? Where can we report these men? And where can we make them respond and pay for what they're doing to our kids? Because it can't be just one way. It can't be just one way. So, in conclusion, I want to give you solutions. And I'm going to say a lot of other assumptions as well, but please bear with me because I know it won't apply to everyone. So, the other thing that is a problem in our Black community, for the longest time, we have used restraint, saving, and poverty as a reason to not explore the world around us. And I'm also mindful that I'm making high assumptions here, because I do understand that economically not everyone can afford, but I want to challenge you in this one. And I know it's not the only solution, it will not apply to everyone, but we're using what we can at this point in time. Kids are highly impressionable. Sometimes these guys use things that they know the kids have no access to as a draw card, as a draw card to all of these crazy things. So I'm going to mention things, but I'm going to also mention emotional things that usually are emotional gaps. These guys know the kids that they should go after. They know that they go after kids who are highly insecure, kids that need the validation. Ethi umhle, umile kakuhle, unomzimba omhle. Because if a child is not used to hearing that language from home, when they hear someone estradeni esithi umhle, they think that this is the God's truth, because they've never heard these words before. So I say to the teens that I coach, there's one teenager that I coach that I said to her, Jonga, umhle wena, umhle wena. When you walked into this room, umhle. When you go home, umhle. So no man should come to your face and tell you umhle as if you don't know that already. You must know ukuthi umhle already. So when these boys esikoleni okanye men estadeni besithi umhle, kufuneka ngothuki because umhle already. So this needs to come from us, guys, from our community, from our family, from us as parents, from ekhaya kuqala. Before your child leaves home, they must know umhle. I know we are afraid for them, so sikhuliswe kusithiwa ungamncomi umntana esiva, ne? Except we are living in a different era now. We must ncoma them besiva, guys. We must tell them when they hear us ukuthi umhle mntanami, yazi umile kakuhle. We're not sexualizing it when it's coming from us as parents. But when they meet indoda estradeni ithi umile kakuhle, the way they say it and their intentions are often not clean. So we need to give them the clean intentions from at home. You must tell your kids, you think well. You know how to use your mind. Uyakwazi ukucinga. You know how to use your mind, but it requires us to challenge how we view ourselves as parents and how we view our kids as well. And this is why you must attend the parenting teams workshop, because we have to go at the roots. Umhle mntanami, you dress well. You know how to put your stuff together. You know how to think well. It doesn't mean you won't correct them as you mean or scold them, but the more your kids grow, the more they need you. It doesn't stop. The more they grow, more so in those teen young adults, the more they grow, the more they need you. So we don't stop parenting them because they're 14 and 16. We advance in parenting them because they need it more, because of the world that we're living in. That's the one thing. We validate them. We validate them. Guys, that's the one thing. So that when these men come, we on a foundation already that you've laid as a family. So beg a foundation, a clean as a family, ekhaya. This used to work with me. This is a thing my father did very, very well with me when I was a teenager. I look like my dad. So I've got two sisters. We are three sisters at home. My sisters are lighter in complexion, and I was the dark horse that looks like my father. My sisters look like my mom, so they've got that beauty, that clean beauty, and mine was a bit dodgy. And I used to be called what's this word? Unonga indoda. Because that in the direct translation it unonga indoda, it's like one that could have been a man. And in those years, a man, if you look like a man and you're a female, you're almost seen as ugly automatically. So one of the things my father did very, very well was to say, "Umhle mntanam, ufana nami." He wasn't that handsome, but the fact that it was coming from my dad, it made all the difference in the world. And in my case, he was the primary caregiver, hence that mattered at that time. So when boys met me estradeni, but it didn't have that vibe of me of influencing to do anything for them, because already njengiyazazi ukuthi ngihle. And also my dad would say, "You're smart, you're intelligent, you are very intelligent," and he would give me books and stuff to read. So what I'm saying is, one, my time is coming to an end. Validate your kids, and also please do me this favor, guys. I know you connect, but kids are highly impressionable. If you can save 500 rands, either in a year, depending how your finances are, but find a way, guys. Find a way. No matter 500 rands, instead of eating at Spare, ekasi, take your child to a Spare, a Sea Point. Create the budget, So instead of eating a KFC lower sekasi, go to a KFC or Sea Point. Or go to, say, KFC, who's on the other side of the world, that is glim and glam, because you want to help your child to have the experience of the soft life. As a parent, not by money from these men. Because what these guys do, they look at kids who seem like they're from a poor family. And I know not everyone has money, I know, but in a year, save it, guys. Save it, save it, save it. Even if you're like ice cream only is the point, it doesn't matter. What it does to your child and your mindset, it says, "I belong in these lovely places." That's what it says to your kids. It says, "I belong here. I'm not a foreigner here in these lovely places, in these posh, luxurious places. I can fit in here." So that if these men bathi bamthembisa umntanakho ukuthi ndiza kukhuphela point, umntanakho knows point, but it's not a big deal. Bayayazi uba hayibo, mama took me to point most, so it's not a big deal. What's the point? And if you can save imali, niyolala hotel, noma weekend, noma isibusuku one with your kids. I know, guys, imali is a problem. I understand, but just trust God and trust life. Trust life. Wherever you believe in, trust life, trust God, trust the universe to give you that ability, not just once a year, to take your kids out. because they must experience all of this from you first. From you first. And then, secondly, if you know you're a stingy parent, let that go. Because that's the other thing that breaks kids. They know unemali. Uyamnikeza ubhudvusi umbheje ngemoto yakho, umnikeze imali yakho, the new boyfriend yakho. But your child just wants one sneaker in a year and awumnikezi because uthi makayosebenza hard, but ubhudvusi uyambona ukuthi akasebenzi hard yena. Just once a year, buy your child that beautiful sneaker. If you listen to that voice note, that girl only bought impahla with that money. To teenagers, impahla is everything. It doesn't have to be top brands. In my home, we were not bought top brands all the time. We were not bought top brands all the time, but we knew there's a certain time where we could buy whatever we want. In December, in my home, it was December. In December, my dad would say, so in December, and you can buy what you want, and you would have this budget. I always looked forward to that because, So if you know awuna mali, mzali, if you know awuna mali, sit down with your kids and say, akuzohlala kunje apha ekhaya. Sit down with your kids. Uthi akuzohlala kunje apha ekhaya. And you must make a pact with yourself ukuthi one day I'm going to have a life that's going to support my kids financially. I have to go. My other meeting is starting. I have to go. This conversation was getting more exciting. Let me see. Please attend the Parenting Teams workshop. I'll talk more there. But if you can't afford it, listen to this video again. But also, we must also decide the things that we need to invest in that's going to support us in growing and grooming our kids. We must choose what we invest in. We must put money aside to invest in the right things. If you can't show up for your kids because you are too busy, I'm saying get a teen coach. Get support in this journey of parenting. It's important, it's necessary, because you're not saving money by not paying us, guys. You're not saving money at all. And this is not me selling our services. In fact, I am selling our services. Nothing wrong with that. You're not saving money by not paying for a service to us. You're not saving money. What ends up happening when you have to fix something wrong, you have to take much more longer services to pay for something. You must now pay for rehab. You must now pay for hospital. You must now pay for money to go to jail to go see your child. And. Whereas prevention is always going to be better than cure all the time. I have to go. My meeting is starting. I'll check your comments. I'll respond to you later. And again, please don't judge the parents. Please don't judge the parents. People are doing what they know best at a given time. Don't judge the parents. We are all trying to do the best that we can with what we are given. Please don't judge those parents. And lastly, that's all. Bye.